Well, we have our own, we have our precinct.
Good morning, are you able to hear us?
And then we have the shared services.
Great.
We're part of a precinct. That precinct has 3 different. No creek, no.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the issues.
And then I don't know where, which precinct does Canyon?
That is so.
Do they have a building precinct or something that they're attached to? Where are they attached?
They're attached to 2 special ops and then the Canyon building. So the Canyon building is actually. Well, they've been in Cottonwood Heights for 30 years, so they're still there. The building's still there. Yeah. But we're in his area, but it's ours.
Yes.
They were starting.
Good morning, everybody. This is Deputy Mayor Litvak. I apologize that I'm not there with you all in person today. We've had a little COVID, I'll say nightmare that has gone through my household, and I chose to stay here at home today till we all test negative. I don't want to get anyone ill. So I'm going to do my very best to chair this virtually with most of you in the room today. So I apologize if it's a little awkward. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to our UPD meeting. Harmony, would you be willing to do a roll call to ensure we have a quorum today?
Councilman Bradley,
Here.
Director Brands,
Here.
Director Daly,
Here.
Director Flint,
Here.
Director Keegley, Director Litvak,
Here.
Director Olson,
Present.
Director Peterson,
Here.
Director Picopus. Work conflict. Director Silvestrini,
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I gotta go to each PD meeting. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Director Stevenson.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning, Mayor Silvestrini. All right, it looks like we're all set and have a quorum. We'll go ahead and see if there's any public comment in the room today or online. Okay. Harmony, anyone online?
We don't have anything ready for taking public comment online for this meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 3 with a UPD update from Sheriff Rivera.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our new system. We had a new system put in, so Harmony advised me that everybody can be heard because we have mics throughout the room now, so we're kind of excited about that. We shouldn't have any more problems. I want to begin my update by, first of all, recognizing some officers who have been recognized by other agencies for the fantastic work that they do. We typically get officers who are recognized in the precincts on a monthly basis, but with the county-wide services or the investigation services, usually those recognitions are done yearly or quarterly. But this year, we're really excited to say that the DEA, Metro Narcotics Task Force, had their award luncheon. And in that award luncheon, we had 3 of our detectives were recognized, and I'm going to read it out. And we do have, I believe, one here. So, oh, well, we have two, but Johnny, you're for DEA. So we have Detective Johnny No. He was awarded the Task Force Officer of the Year. Detective Jared Angel, he was awarded the Collaboration Officer of the Year, and Detective Ryan Stocking, Major Case of the Year. Now, Johnny is assigned to the county-wide investigations, and then Jared is Kearns and Magna, and Ryan Stocking is Mill Creek. So I just wanted you to know what these detectives are doing. They're working big, major cases, and they really have an impact on our communities when it comes to drug investigations. And, you know, these take a lot of work, and some of these cases go months and months, and they're so dedicated. But for us to receive 3 awards in 1 year out of the DEA Narcotics Task Force is just incredible. So we wanted to say thank you to our detectives and all their hard work. And I also want to thank their Sergeant Mike Ricketts, who oversees that program. And then the Chief Omby, who is the chief over Mike Ricketts. So I want to thank all of them for their work as well, and their support to these detectives. So we can. So Johnny, thank you. Nice, thank you.
Thank you all.
Now, this other award is really significant to us and the state of Utah. So the U.S. Attorney General every year gives out awards across the country. But it was unique that one of the Utah detective received the award. The U.S. Attorney's Office presented the award to Detective Ben Kander from UPD yesterday. They couldn't do the normal routine of when they do these awards every year, they send the award to Washington, D.C. and the award is presented by the Attorney General himself. But Ben had the opportunity, he was at a conference when this announcement came out. He had the opportunity to meet the Attorney General and engage with him there, and he was able to thank Ben for his efforts. But this is a really huge award. The acting U.S. Attorney commented yesterday that they could not recall when anybody from Utah has ever received this award. So kudos to Ben. His award was given to him for criminal investigations. A portion of that was the Sherry Black case and how Ben worked so diligently to bring that case to conclusion, but it also included all of the other work that Ben has done throughout his career, solving homicide cases and working with our communities to keep them safe. So this was really just a unique opportunity for all of us. But we have never watched where sometimes you'll see the President of the United States put on that medal on an officer or whoever is receiving that award. Because Ben didn't go to DC, that didn't happen, but they did that for him yesterday. And we brought the awards, we brought the plaques, and the award is just fantastic. You can come and view the medal if you'd like before you leave. It is just an incredible opportunity for us. But that, again, Ben is part of the county-wide precinct, we call it, but he is that position is oversaw by Chief Omby as well. So kudos to Chief Omby again. They're just doing incredible work, and I want to thank all of his detectives because it doesn't just take one, they all work together. We know that Ben didn't do all this by himself, but others have helped, but you can only recognize one at a time. So anyway, kudos to Ben. If we can give him a hand too. That is for my recognition tonight or today, and then we do have some officers being recognized in holiday tonight, so there's quite a lot of officers, I believe, so thank you, Mayor, for doing that, and we can talk about that in the next update when we have those names, but thank you. Any questions on any of the?
Hey, Sheriff.
Yes.
Sheriff, this is Jeff Silverstream. So I would just like to thank Ben Pender. This isn't the first time that he's been recognized for this kind of work. And, he is tremendous asset to the department in that cold case stuff. So I would like to personally convey my gratitude to him for the work that he does in that area. It's important. And I think it really helps bring, closure for a lot of families who are really, in difficult situations when these things go unsolved. So thanks, Detective. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then next, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the grants that are coming through from the DOJ. We are looking at every grant that comes through that we think that we might be able to qualify for. There is one that is a COP grant. It's about hiring officers to do COP. The challenge that we have is the requirements are that we have a match. So we have to pay a certain portion for those officers. And then the other requirement is that you hire that person for that specific job. So you would just hire them up, from the academy or wherever and assign them to do that specific job. That is our challenge because the way we operate here, we have officers put in for specialty positions and we choose the best person. This is a requirement where we would have to hire somebody for that position. So we're still taking a look at it, but with the match, that becomes a challenge too, because eventually UPD will be responsible for the full cost. So just wanted you to know that we are looking at grants and trying to find other, funding through grants that can help UPD move forward. But right now that COPS grant is at the top of our list. And then a mental health grant we are submitting again. We did receive it a couple of years ago, but that is expiring this year, and we're submitting an application to get more funding for that as well. And then the last thing I have is the board had asked us to put the ARPA requests into our budget. The challenge that we're having is we don't have ARPA funds. So to put it in our budget, it would increase our budgets by an enormous amount. So my thoughts is, do we put it in as a regular request, which will shoot our budget way up and be very alarming to all of you? Or do we keep it separate, knowing these are things we would love if we could get through an ARPA fund, but we don't have ARPA funds. So it's a challenge, yes.
Within the municipal service district, the various metros have their ARPA funds. The issue with that is once we spend a piece of that, it has to be accounted in our budget. So we have to amend our budget at the end of the day to show that money. So I don't know how we get around that.
And I don't either, because they're all separate entities and UPD doesn't get ARPA funds.
What do you do with gifts?
With gifts, we do a donation. So Chief Mazarin will do one today. We present it to you every month, our donations.
Do you include it in the budget?
Yes, the donations are included.
Every dime taken, you have to.
Yeah, so we would have to figure out how do we bring the ARPA funds in as revenue, but then the expenditure piece would be part of our budget. But our budget requests, my priority is not going to be ARPA requests. My priority is going to be compensation.
It's the same thing with the COVID monies. They had to be counted in the budget once they were expended.
Right. But right now, the board has not made any decisions how they're going to get those ARPA funds to the UPD. So that's my challenge is we're working on our current budget to present to you our tentative budget next month. But if you want me to put the ARPA requests in there, it's gonna explode that budget. So I guess I'm asking for some kind of a direction of what you would, I'm happy to keep it separate. The undersheriff has presented it 2 or 3 times already this year of what the budget, the ARPA requests would be. But we don't have a way to do that unless you give me some kind of direction. And I see the chair, I thought Aaron had.
Yeah, I was gonna just make a recommendation. My suggestion would be that you present them as part of the overall budget, highlight them as ARPA eligible, but within the context of all and any new requests that are coming into the budget, you prioritize those in the level of importance for the agency. So we as a collective group can identify priorities and where we feel like we can go to. Again, I think the nuance here is some communities have expended their ARPA dollars already and other communities have not. And so how we utilize those dollars is up to every individual group in conjunction with their councils. So I think, identifying what you believe to be ARPA eligible after a legal review of eligibility, but then prioritizing any and all new requests, I think would help us as a board make those decisions. But I welcome feedback from our other board members, obviously, but that's my thought.
So I agree with that as well.
For a city like Mobile, where we have all of our ARPA funding dedicated already, I think putting it in the budget, and regardless, we'll determine if that goes through, then how we pay for it. But I think we need to see the true cost of the budget within that.
Okay. Now, you said have a legal opinion on ARPA funds. Since we don't get the ARPA funds, we may have to reach out to all of you if you have your legal already that's done those reviews of what's, I
So
can
Sheriff,
sign
we
it
can
to
be-
Harry, but we don't get ARPA funds.
Sheriff, Mill Creek can be a resource to you on that because we've
Yeah.
we've done a lot of work on that. We also have, all of us also have another resource, through the League of Cities and Towns, that we have a dedicated employee who is assisting cities determining ARPA eligibility. So if you have questions about that, or if we can, I'd say be in contact with either through me or our city attorney, John Brems. Feel free to reach out on any questions on that about things. But, basically the expenses, there needs to be some kind of relationship to, the pandemic and, either extra expenses that are incurred as a result of the pandemic, like overtime that may have been paid because people were out, either because they were, had fallen ill or they needed a quarantine. And then there, in terms of equipment and things like that, there needs to be some kind of a relationship to the pandemic. So, it may be limited in terms of what we can actually do, but yeah, reach out if you have questions about anything.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. Mayor Silvestrini, the DA's office has a team that's evaluating everything for ARPA eligibility as well. I would say if it's going to be funded out of direct ARPA dollars, there's a rather rigorous outcomes and indicators process through the federal guidelines that you as UPD will need to administer and follow on behalf of us. So it gets a little complicated in my mind when there may be municipalities who are paying with ARPA and then others that are not. So there's some nuance here that we're going to need to work through as it relates to ARPA.
And I think I have a question is that.
She can go first.
Well, you were first, but
You go
whatever,
first.
whoever wants to go first.
There's a process that we have in our metro, that we have our admin money. And my extra COVID money, which eventually the federal government says, it don't matter what you spend it on, we don't want the money back, you can spend it on anything. I see in the future ARPA money going the same way, because feds aren't going to say, bring me that back so they can account for it back in their funds. But our admin money, let's say that I go to the Midvale precinct and I said, I want an extra something for my community. I can directly pay that out of my admin money, budget it there. And then that activity in person be then covered and we pay the bill. So it directly flows and stays what our money is, and it doesn't show up in your budget. Am I creative accounting at this point? Am I safe? Like, but I think there are ways, it depends on what it is. If it's an ongoing thing that's going to have to be funded, we're gonna have to pick it up in our budget anyway. Because to do something for 1 year and not do it the next year, it's really a disservice. You start something and don't finish it, it should be budgeted. But if it's a one-time something, like the, what do you call it, the emergency, the command center thing, we have that also as an option. We could all share and pay for a share of that product. And I don't think you'd have to have it show up as a monetary, budgetary item. I don't know, we're being creative here.
Yeah, when Under Sheriff Peterson presented the list, most of them would be one-time items.
But it would have to be that, I don't know how you pay for it and then it becomes an asset. It's a asset in the budget, but the money wasn't expended in the budget. It came from another budget and we paid the bill. Like maybe whoever you buy it from, we can divide out the bill.
Yeah, and that's, I'll work with Lisa on that, Councilwoman.
So going with what she said, let's use the command center as an example. So the ARPA funds comes by the population, correct? So would, if this board decided to use that funding for the command center, would each member pay according to the population?
Well, you would pay by the formula that, how we figured out the budget. So Slovisa would be a whole. It would come out of a solid.
And then Slovisa in
So
turn.
that's our challenge. How does Slovisa?
Slovisa
Have a
can't,
meeting next. to
Would then
Slovisa.
Slovisa then take a share by population by each member?
Slovisa's in the same boat that UPD is.
Right,
It
Slovisa
cannot-
doesn't have money either, so we have to go to
the
Slovisa and do the exact same
municipalities,
thing.
Right, so I'm asking Frank, so then each Slovisa member would pay according to the population or that formula?
By the formula.
Well, no, you know, the money goes, Slovisa is one, remember, we always deal with this, is one fund. And when it gets in there, we just allocate it based on different costs that are needed in the different precincts. But it is going into one fund. Well, I think we've done that, I think in the past.
Well, so I just want to verify that it would be done by population by that formula.
That's how you get your funds, but as it goes into Slovisa.
Yes.
Help me, it does not, there's no formula
No,
for it.
Slovisa, we think of it is a whole. We don't bill the individual communities. Our member is Slovisa, so the Slovisa board would have to have input.
So the Slovisa board would have to decide how those funds come into Slovisa, whether they use a formula or however they decide. That's up to the board. And we'll have this conversation in the next meeting with Slovisa.
Okay, all right, I'll hold
And
that for
then if the
the
board chooses to use the formula, then the formula is used. But as UPD is concerned, it would just be billing Slovisa as a whole.
So, yeah, so that'll be a question for Savisa because, and the reason why I bring it up is because if you look at the population of Copperton, it's extremely small. You look at the population of Brighton, it's extremely small compared to Magnum and Kearns, which is, population is very large.
Correct.
So that, okay.
That's all I
In
have.
other words, because our ARPA funds pretty much are dismal.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, I think that's why it's important to prioritize, Sheriff,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
order of importance of any of these new requests. And I'll say, specifically from the county standpoint is we will rigorously be following the federal guidelines and following the rules that are set out by ARPA. We are starting to see the federal government audit as it related to the use of CARES dollars, and they are asking for some of those funds back for funding that was misused. So we will be approaching it on the county side very, very thoughtfully and strategically, and how we determine how we're going to pay our UPD expenses will be a county decision in conjunction with UPD, but also in regards to legality as to the use of these dollars. So it's very complicated. It's complicated even within our own existing budget, how we're managing this. And there are ways to utilize the funds to backlog for revenue loss, but with inflation and everyone, at least on the county side, seeing growth in our sales taxes, the ability to use those funds more freely and not through the rigorous ARPA project are becoming smaller and smaller. So I think it's something that every community is going to have to determine. But what I think is important for us is to understand the priorities of UPD. And if the command center is at the top of the priority list, then we have to talk about it from that vantage point.
I'll just throw in another quickie. It just dawned on me as Aaron was speaking that shared services comes out of the county budget. They get ARPA funds, and since it would be a shared item amongst all jurisdictions, it would only make sense it comes out of shared services, and the ARPA funds that the county gets be utilized there, and it'd be allocated to the shared services assets.
County only pays 20% of shared services. Everybody else pays
Still,
80%.
they have a means of funneling.
But they would pay their 20% or their, through whatever formula is, the county will pay their fair share. Any other questions? If not, that concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. We'll move on to budget item number 4, or not budget item, sorry, agenda item number 4, the Benefits and Compensation Committee update. Councilmember Brems and our Chief Ackerman will be leading this discussion.
Morning, everybody. I was joking with Councilwoman Kegley this morning. I'm nervous every time I step in front of you because you know what I'm going to be coming to talk to you about. I'm sure we all look forward to the days when we can get back into the normal schedule when we talk about compensation. So I did want to bring up a few things just to provide some context before we get into the meat of the discussion. Just to provide a current overview with regard to officer retention, turnover, and our current staffing situation. Just a snapshot of where we currently are. And looking at the previous 3 years of attrition for the Unified Police Department, we were averaging about 0.8 officers a week in turnover. That's those that are leaving the department. So just less than an officer per week is what we were averaging for the prior 3 years. Since July of 2021, when we really started to see these jumps in wages, UPD has done a good job that rate has decreased to 0.46. So now we are down to losing an officer about every 2 weeks in turnover. So we are seeing a market change that the increases that we've made and that it is having an impact on our retention. Currently, the department has 7 true office vacancies. With that, we are hiring 4 lateral officers that start on Monday. So 4 of those positions will be filled as of Monday. We also have 7 officers right now that are currently in our training program. And to put into context, we finished a recruitment that we're currently in the background process of. Our last recruitment, we had 18 applicants that moved on in our hiring process. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything related to current staffing situations or how things have worked that way.
How many applied? When you say 18 moved on, how many?
I believe we had 20 and a couple didn't show up for the first phase of the testing.
Where a couple of years ago, we would have had over 100.
yeah, the pool of applicants wanting to join our profession in general has become very shallow. So moving on, the last time we presented to the compensation committee, the consumer price index or inflation, what we're looking at was about just above 8%. Latest projections, we've heard that now is up over 10%. Inflation that we're expecting here in the state. Now I realize that's a number that can definitely fluctuate and swing, but to kind of put that into context as we move into the discussion. And if Rick, you could help me out. So I provided in your packet, there's a page in there looking at just providing an overview of where the UPD is currently situated in the compensation market. Taylorsville did make an increase at the beginning of the year. So you can see that UPD is currently in rank number 6. But if you look at the top out pay and where we currently are situated, we are definitely a lot closer to those top 3 positions than we were. And the percentage difference there is indicated in the far right column on that colored spreadsheet. So what was discussed and recommended we push forward out of the compensation committee was proposing a surgical increase for each rank and a percentage to move each rank into that number 3 position. And so if Rick, you could go to that next slide.
When you want. Oh, that one.
Yes, yeah. So this shows the percentage increases for each rank position. So for the officer rank, what was recommended is a 1.5% increase. Sergeant rank, a 1% increase. For the lieutenant rank, they were the most out of market for our sworn positions. So a 3% increase for lieutenants. Captains are currently situated competitively in the market. And then the chief and deputy chief positions each would receive a 1% increase as far as market adjustments. So there's any questions or discussion that we'd like to have. As you can see on the slide up here, and it's also in your packets, you can see what the total increase would be into each of our members here. Factored into this is also what we'll get into next is discussing civilian compensation and that increased percentage, and then also the cost of living that's been proposed for the entire department. So before we get into that, I don't know if there's any questions regarding the sworn and the percentage increases that were recommended for the adjustment of those ranks. Okay, so moving on to now discussing civilians. The civilians have not received the increase that the sworn has, and I know it's a big priority of the sheriff that we compensate our civilians. And kind of to give an overview of the situation there, a lot of our civilians positions, we've had civilians leaving to go to other departments to do similar jobs, sometimes making $3 to $5 more an hour. And our turnover there is we're bringing them in with minimal to no experience. We're training them up, and then they are leaving. We have had vacant positions that we have put out, that we've tried to hire for, that we'll get applicants that get through the process, and then we'll get hired somewhere else. So we're having difficulty filling our civilian positions, and we believe that a lot of those positions are out of market. To kind of tell you, I want to put on your forefront, we have been working on a project for the last 4 or 5 months, looking at our civilian compensation. It's similar to our sworn pay scale, which I'm sure you are all familiar with because I've been bringing it to almost every meeting. We do have a civilian pay scale as well. The problem that we found with our civilian pay scale is we haven't been following it historically. And so we found some issues with the way that we've been using that civilian pay scale. There are a lot of steps and a lot of things that are included in that just do not apply to us. And that was something that we adopted from the county when we formed the UPD. The county fixed their civilian pay scale in, I believe, 2018. So what we are trying to do is fix our civilian pay scale. We're not quite complete with the project yet. But what we do believe is when we can present that to you, that it will simplify things when we do our market study, which we're scheduled to do in this fall, that it will simplify a lot of the complications that we had in the last market study, specifically involving the civilian positions. So what was recommended was a market adjustment for all civilian positions of 5%. And you can see that figure in there. So I don't know if there's any questions about the civilian market adjustment.
So just to clarify, Chief, that will also be, that 5% is going to be spread over certain positions. That's the average of what's going to happen, but there may be some that get 10% and some that get 1%, depending on where they're at in their position in the market. It's just not a blanket 5%.
So what was proposed is a blanket 5%. So we do believe that the majority of our civilian positions are out of market. There are a few that are fixed with grant money that we receive, whether through the school district for the civilians that work in there. What really will illustrate that is when we do our compensation study in the fall, that will identify which ones are the most out of market. But at this time, we don't have that study to provide that accurate snapshot like we do on the sworn side.
I mean, basically what we're saying then is civilians are going to get a 10% adjustment across the board.
If we do agree to the 5% COLA in addition to, that would be correct.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fine if you're going to look at it. It just bothers me that you're just going to blanket a market. And if you've got people that are in market or even above market, it's going to take them above market. And so we just don't have any way of identifying by civilian position where those positions are in the market and then be able to be more surgical in terms of where that money's applied. Do you see what I mean?
I definitely agree. One of the other issues that we're addressing with this civilian pay scale is a lot of the positions are so unique that we are having a difficult time comparing them to others to get a fair market assessment. So we're really consolidating job titles and also with the job requirements so that they are more similarly compared to other agencies, so we can get a more accurate view of where they fall in that market. Because that one of the issues we had with our last compensation study was they were so unique that they stood alone and we couldn't get an accurate comparison with job descriptions of other agencies, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I have to declare my conflict of interest because I have a relative working in the system. One of the biggest complaints is civilian has never been considered for a lot of these raises over time. We talked about it last year, but a lot of the people are so far below market. If you did a market study, they are so far below and really don't make a lot of money. They can go to McDonald's and make more money than they work in some of the civilian positions in this system. But when I also would like to know, when we talk civilian employees, does that include everyone, jail, all the?
It does not include Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. This is only UPD. The jail is Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. So this is strictly UPD.
So jail is where?
Jail is under the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, and this has nothing to do with the Sheriff's Office.
So they don't, who decides their pay raises?
For the jail, we do our budget every November, December. That's our budget time.
So that's,
We would do the jail
so when we vote increases for civilians, it never talks about the jail.
That has nothing to do with, this is strictly UPD. It is not Salt Lake County.
That's why you can't hire people over there. So that's the thing. We all think we're talking all inclusive, but obviously it's not. We're so compartmentalized that when we talk services, there are some parts that are just not in part of the whole process that we're discussing. So that's good to know.
Yeah, and let me comment a little bit on our civilian staff for UPD includes like our records, our forensics, our victim advocates. And in law enforcement, that is really hard to figure out in a market. Like if we go out of state, we might find some similars. But when UPD was created, all of those employees were Salt Lake County Sheriff employees. And they came over with some of the same job descriptions. And throughout time, we're finding it's not the same as, you know, as somebody that works for Salt Lake County that does some type of record keeping is not the same as what our records folks do here. And that's why we have to find some type of good market study to get our civilians for UPD within that market. Many of them make about $14 an hour. So the mayor's right. They could go to McDonald's and make $5 more an hour. That's why we chose the 5%, feeling that it could help them across the board until we can get this market study done. But when we did a market adjustment a couple of years back, it only impacted just a small amount of employees that we were able to identify at that time. But we are looking at all of our civilians as a whole. Do you have the number of civilians that we have? 88, so it'd be about 88 people. That
Yeah,
we're
and
trying
so, I mean, basically what I don't argue with we've spent so much time focusing on the sworn piece that the civilian piece got, you know, maybe set aside for a minute, and same with UFA, and we're addressing the same thing across the street. So I don't have no issue with the fact that it's an issue that needs to be addressed, but it seems to me like what we're saying is, look, we've got a COLA that we're going to consider across the board, but we need to make just an overall 5% market adjustment just to stabilize the civilian piece of it, with the understanding that we're going to look at it after that and do a full market analysis. And we may have to come back to the board and say, now, here's what we recommend up and down the civilian spectrum in terms of additional adjustments that need to be made to stay, but we're just not in a position right now to analyze it to that detail. Right?
Very good.
Okay.
We do believe that the majority are out of market. There may be a percentage that would be above market. And once we made that determination, they would be redlined until the pay scale caught up to the wage that they're making. So we believe that that is definitely the minority.
Yeah. And I mean, to be clear, if it's 2 or 3 or 4 people, what we're talking about is a few dollars. It's not, it's individuals. So anyway, okay.
And any other questions about that before we launch into the cost of living discussion?
Sheriff, just for clarifications, we're doing our, this breakdown is the overview that we saw yesterday is this same breakdown, right? And the numbers that were presented?
Yes.
Yes.
So in looking at a cost of living adjustment, this is an adjustment for all members of the department. And this really is in relation to the inflation of the CPI that we're looking at. Again, that is a fluctuating number. When we started these discussions, we were about 8%. Latest reporting says that's over 10%. And that can fluctuate, you know, next month, next quarter, and continue to change as the economy does. So the discussion, what was recommended to move to the board from the compensation committee was a 5% cost of living adjustment across the board for all employees. And so as you would see, when you add that to the other adjustments, as Mayor Donnelly pointed out, the civilians would be looking at a 10% increase. Once you combine those two, officers would be looking at a 6.5, sergeant 6, lieutenants 8, and chief and deputy chief positions would be a 6% increase. And then that is on this slide and also in your packets, that is the accurate number of the impact to the overall organization and to each partner.
And that'll be in your packet when we do the one-on-ones, and if we've already done the one-on-ones, it's in there.
So as of now, this is just an informational item, but we would like some direction if we could get it so that for next month, when we present the tentative budget, if we're comfortable with these numbers, we can include that. Or if you would like to see something different, or if we need to make some changes, that would be very helpful.
Well, I, for one, support this recommendation. But I would ask the rest of the board to please weigh in. And are you looking for a motion, Chief, or just some general direction?
Just some general direction would be great.
Yeah,
I think it's a good start point. I agree with the deputy mayor that you got to have some place to start, and then we'll start going through the other details of the budget. May have to adjust it, but I think it's reasonable.
I agree.
And consistent with what we're seeing going on in other municipalities and organizations in terms of the COLA issue.
I agree.
And I'll just say,
Pretty much the agreement of the committee too.
this Jeff Silverstone, I support it based upon the, I mean, we had a robust discussion about this at the committee hearing. And I think we've kind of struck a good compromise in terms of the COLA increases may be a little bit lower than we might otherwise have wanted, just because of the actual rate of inflation. But this strategy does address the top 3 pledge that the board has made to try to keep our officers in that range and also provide them a reasonably healthy COLA increase. So I think this is a good balance.
Great.
Some numbers for a COLA 5, 6, and 7% for comparison.
So we actually, with this slide, we do have the capability of doing that right now. If you would like to see what a 6% would do. Rick's quick, he's faster than I can talk. So this would be the change. So Rick, I don't know if you could kind of toggle back and forth so that they can see 5% would be looking at about a $3.6 million increase, and then a 6%, 4.1. So you're looking about 1% increase would change about 500,000 for each percent.
You can also have that email now so I can share with my council. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Does that, Chief, does that feed into the overall member fee increase? I mean, this is just for the COLA, and you can see the number, but I think what we'd be interested in is what does it do to my member fee? Is it the same or is it different? There's other variables inside there that aren't going to change. So I know when we looked at ours in the one-on-ones, it reflected a 5% and 5% market, and we could see, okay, my member fee now based on what we're proposing in our precinct is going to be this. But wouldn't you want to see, Alan, like if you make those changes, what happens to my overall member? Maybe it's different for Sylvia. I don't know.
Well, I'm just looking at Kearns. It went from 557 to 604 with a 2% increase.
Maybe I'm thinking of it wrong.
Yeah, because it is listed up there, individual too, when he changes it, that those numbers change. So at 7%, you could see holiday, your individual would be the 453,000. Can you go back to 5%, correct? And then
Well, yeah, I can
dropped
see
down to
that, but-
350.
But I'd want to, I'm just wondering if it's going to be different if we see it in the overall template, has all the shared services breakdown, precinct breakdown.
Those are included in that.
This is
so
the same.
with that, so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry.
So is it fair to say this is the holistic increase we could anticipate based solely on the compensation adjustment?
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
That's not including any additional FTEs or other things that may be proposed in the budget, but related to compensation, that should give us the clear picture. Is that a fair assessment, Chief?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
So I will send out the 5%, 6%, and 7% after this meeting, so you can see what that change would be. And then we will move forward with the 5%. However, if next month we would like to make some changes, we can do that in the tentative budget.
So on the other side of this equation, what can we afford to do? What is that?
Well, every entity is different, so you would have to look at it as a whole, as Lisa can afford, and then Holiday has to look at it their own way, Midvale and Mill Creek. That's really something that you'll have to discuss in this next Lisa meeting, I think, of what as a whole, because that's really not us to determine what you can afford. All we can do is go by your direction of what you want us to include and present. And really it's the board's decision on what direction we go.
And I'll just say, this is Jeff, you know, the 5% increase and these other increases are basically what Mill Creek can afford. And I'm not going to support going higher on the cost of living just because of the cost to our taxpayers and the fact that our council is going to be reaching to reach this level. This is like an extra $100,000 on our bill for every percentage, and it's already pretty rich for our taxpayers. And it's going to involve a truth of taxation proceeding and us digging into our fund balance to fund this without seeing like a 16% property tax increase for the next 2 years. Not this year and again next year to fund this. So, I appreciate that we're doing what we can, but I'm just saying that this is what we can reach for. So.
I'll just say Midvale City is in a similar position, and I think we've already got some stress about where the budget is at right now, and continuing to push that COLA higher than 5% would be really incredibly difficult for us.
And I think Lisa is pushed up to the tax cap anyway, so we're limited.
And unless there's any other discussion, thank you. It's very helpful moving this forward.
Thank you, Chief. Do you want to move on just to the health insurance renewal, which is our next agenda item?
That would be great. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we had a presentation. We actually have a new insurance broker. We went up to bid for, and GBS is the company that we're using now. They came and did a presentation to the Benefits and Compensation Committee. In looking at our insurance, we've been really fortunate the last several years that we've been flat. We have not had any increases for the past several years. With some of that, we believe is attributed to COVID and a lot of elective procedures that were delayed or put off. But now what we're looking at is a 6.8% increase to our health insurance. And with that, the discussion in the committee, there was kind of two opposing ideas of how we were going to address that 6.8% increase, which and there is a slide in here, or I'm sorry, there's a page in your packet if you would like to look at that, but I'll go ahead and give you the numbers as well. But 6.8% increase is equivalent to about $325,000 annually. And so the discussion with the committee does the organization want to absorb 100% of that increase for the members? Or the other side of that discussion is do we want to split that increase with our members at an 80% and a 20%, which that would then put the increase at $260,000 for the department, and then the remaining $65,000 would be picked up by the members, by the employees. which would be equivalent to about $157 annually to each member. And there was some discussion as to whether to absorb the 100% or also if there was value in sharing some of that increase with the membership. So what we're looking for is some direction. We do have open enrollment that is beginning next month. So we would like to solidify how we want to absorb this increase so that we can update our insurance packets and begin open enrollment here the next several weeks.
Has it always been 80-20%?
So we've done both. For the last several increases, the UPD has absorbed the entire amount. But if you do go back, historically, it has been shared in the past as well, that 80-20. So we answer your question, we've done it both ways.
So the current structure is 80-20.
That's correct.
I can pass costs along, but shouldn't we be incentivizing or continue to be incentivizing our members to be responsible consumers of healthcare? And if we don't pass along, if we don't take 80%, they take 20%, doesn't that send kind of a mixed message? Shouldn't we be having our members be in tune with how much health insurance we are consuming and that there's a cost to that and that they're going to have to share part of that? I've never been involved, at least in the private sector, when you have shared costs, it's just shared costs. And so if it goes up and you're paying 80%, the company gets its 80%, the employee gets its 20% as a way to say, look, if we're not going to be responsible consumers of this, there's a cost that's going to have to be borne by the people that are consuming the health insurance, if that makes any sense.
I agree with that philosophy. I think that it does encourage wise utilization and appreciation for the amount of the benefit. And we just need to ensure that we adequately communicate the fact that the department is picking up 80% of this increase for the insureds. And I mean, that's the way I've always seen it done in the private sector.
Yeah, because these benefits also cross the line to all of our lower income folks that work within the system. And if they're making at tops $14 an hour and spouse is making $11 or $13 an hour, if you look at that as a salary for 80 hours a year per person, that's not enough to pay for major medical. And I've seen something happen. There's a trend. In our day when we were young, people weren't going to the hospital as much. But I've seen a trend in the younger population having very, very serious surgeries in stay in hospital. And they can't afford those co-pays. They can't afford the insurance either. So I think we have to be careful of saying, you guys have to be taking care of yourself. We're not going to pay for this. I think part of the reason some people come to work for certain agencies is because of the benefit of medical. And people are just not able to dig out when they have major medical done. I've seen that with several people. A young lady that's 16 years old just had 2 knees operated on for 20 minutes. There's more serious events that cost a lot more. And if the compensation isn't good, they're going to go find someplace else to work where the compensation is good. So it's the human aspect of what we do also, not just numbers.
I would suggest if that's the case, that the board take up a different debate about whether we want to change the split, which would be fine with me if that's what we want to do. But I just have a problem with the cost going up, and it's supposed to be a shared cost and it's not. It's just.
Yeah. Well, it's going up.
I think it sends a bad message if we think our benefit is out of line in terms of that split, what the split is, and we think it should be 90-10, great. I have no problem with that. as long as if it goes up, they take their 10%. That's all. I just think it's I think it sends a bad message when you say the costs are gonna go up, but the people that are consuming the health insurance don't realize any of that, of the effect of that.
The underwriters are the ones that are saying it's going up because they have to make the money back because they paid out a lot on all the disasters over the years, so. It's a byproduct of the situation we live in as a society.
Well, we've seen it in other agencies where the rate has not gone up based upon the fact that utilization was low. And so the fact that the rate goes up is a direct result of the utilization of the benefit. And I don't want to discourage people from using the benefit. That's why we provide it. But I think that it's not unreasonable to have a program like Mayor Daly said, where, you know, the benefit is 80% of your insurance. And if that goes up, then it's still 80% of your insurance. And if we want to talk about whether that should be 90%, like you said, that's a fair thing. But I also think, just given the fact that we are otherwise providing what is going to be a sizable increase for both sworn and civilian employees, that it's not unreasonable to pass along the result of the utilization of the insurance.
To be fair too, I think we did underutilize the pool for a couple of years, and as I recall, we returned that money right back to the employees.
Yes.
So
Yes, we
like
did.
we're trying to be, you know, I think we've been fair about it. That's just my opinion, but
They
I
say make-
usage go down in the next couple of years after people have now gone back and done some elective surgeries that they couldn't do during COVID. So we may get back to a new normal in a couple of years, 1 or 2 years.
We, for the last 2 years, we have received, I don't know if we call it a rebate or we have received money back. Even with this increase, we still could receive a rebate depending on usage. So it is likely that we could still get one. So that happens, we don't know, because it is based on utilization, but that is still a possibility that we receive that.
So I concur with the philosophy of Mayor Silvestrini and Mayor Daly about having it go both directions as a shared expense. So I do believe the 80-20 is appropriate. I appreciate the point that was raised about us returning funding to our employees when there was a rebate. And I, at least from a philosophical standpoint, I would continue to support that moving forward. So that's just my position, and welcome other input from the board. Chief, I don't know if you have a sufficient direction, but that's at least what I hear the board leaning towards, but I'd welcome other feedback before we close this agenda item.
Dave Olson, I have a question, please, real quick. Jason, wasn't the annual increases spelled out in GBS's proposal? And is this particular increase, does that exceed what was?
This is what was presented, so it is the same numbers that was presented by GBS. This is again, these are projections off of an incomplete year, and so oftentimes when we ask for these projected increases, it's based off of all and not complete information because we haven't finished our year, and so that 6.8% was higher initially of what we are insured through PEHP. PEHP came back to GPS with a higher percentage, and GBS was able to negotiate that down. And also because we've been with PEHP for a longer amount of time, they were willing to negotiate that down to that 6.8%. That is the same number.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other input from board members?
If it'd be okay with the chair, if we could get approval on this, on which one we would like to decide.
So are you asking for a motion? Are you asking just for general direction? Again, I'll clarify based on our previous conversation.
A motion would be perfect.
Okay. Is anyone willing to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the health insurance renewal.
Second.
Would that be at the 80-20 or the 100%?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Was it the 80-20?
It was at the 80-20 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Councilman Brown second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Chief, I think you have your direction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, the Finance Committee meeting. Director Keegley.
Yeah, so we had an interesting financial committee meeting, and there were several board members that were there in attendance. And I've asked for a chart to be shown. This one here. Okay, so it was really hard for many of us to grasp this, but I felt that the chart that Lisa put together that you're seeing right now, it's entitled Changes in the Fund Balance. I think it pretty much summarizes it, that as the preset funds were going up, the UPD preset fund was going down, totally out of whack, out of balance. So there was so much to take in that we decided at the financial committee that there would be further discussions and explanations of the charts at our one-on-one. And then we would come back to a whole group in the financial committee, inviting other board members to attend, or we would have it as a board discussion. So without getting into the details, just I think it's important for us to grasp what was taking place.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mayor Silvestrini, please.
Yeah, Jeff Silvestrini. So, I appreciate the discussion we had about this, and I'm actually looking forward to further discussing this with the sheriff and command staff at our one-on-one meeting. Our meeting isn't going to be until May, the first part of May, due to some scheduling issues. But I think what I can say that based upon our internal discussions, I expect that Mill Creek is going to be supportive of what's been proposed here in terms of, if everybody's agreeable, dedicating part of our precinct fund balance to essentially replenish the department-wide fund balance. I mean, that's something we have to maintain by statute anyway. So I think we're able to do that, but I know that there's a limit to that for us, just because in terms of our strategy for paying the increased contract amount, we are going to be using some of our departmental fund balance for our precinct to pay our contract this year. So, we're able to do what we discussed in the committee meeting in terms of augmenting the fund balance of the department to get it back to 5%. But we're also planning on reducing that fund balance this year to avoid a larger tax increase to our residents.
Would you like me to add any?
Yes,
additional?
please,
Okay.
if it is.
Yeah, and I think the conversation here has, accurately reflected the conversation we had at the committee meeting. We have been going through this in great detail with the individual member meetings that we've held so far. A couple of things that I just wanted to point out for those who were not able to attend the committee meeting or who have not had the opportunity to hold our individual meetings so far, is that the dashed line that goes across just above the blue bar section, which is represents the fund balance when UPD.
Fairly complicated and is a reflection of the way we've changed how we move our budget forward, but an important conversation. So thank you. I think for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to learn more about this, the one-on-ones is a great place to really dive into this conversation. So thank you. Any other questions or comments related to this agenda item today? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 7, which is a resolution to ratify the retirement and transfer of K-9 Officer Loki and express our gratitude for his service to UPD. I'll turn the time over to Chief Mazarin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I just could divert for just a moment, I just want to make a shout out to Harmony and Sherry. They've worked on this project of installing these new cameras and microphones in the ceiling. They've been doing it for months. It's been a challenging project, but I think it's going to really enhance and make our board meetings more efficient. So I just want to tell them thanks. Nice job, Harmony.
And the sound is
Sure.
terrific. From the
Yes.
remote aspect, the
Yeah.
sound is much better.
The
Oh,
sound
yeah,
is
yeah,
terrific.
it's gonna
Thank
fix all
you.
sorts of problems, so it's great. So we really appreciate the efforts there. So it's great joy and sadness that we announced the retirement and transfer of Loki. Amazing canine officer, and he could write a whole book about what Loki did, but he did a great job. And so he will be going to live with his handler and be buying a new dog. We really appreciate his service, and so we just need a motion to make that donation.
I'll make a motion for resolution 2204-01 of 2022, resolution to ratify retirement and transfer of K-9 Officer Loki and express gratitude for his service to the UPD.
I'll second that.
Thank you. You'll see in the packet a picture of Loki and his family.
Thank you, everyone. All in favor of approving the resolution, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
So do these dogs have a hard time?
Any opposed?
What's that?
Okay,
Do these dogs have a hard time when they retire?
It's really kind of depends on the situation, but yeah, a working canine dog has a lot of hours and injuries and things like that. So yeah, when they retire, they just need to go easy and relax because you take a lot of years off when you run that long and that hard.
well, I wish Loki and his handler many, many wonderful times with lots of bones and comfy beds. So congratulations to them and wishing them all the best.
Yeah, I'm not sure how old Loki is. I don't. Somebody know? You here know? Loki's like 7. Yeah. Like, like a pet will last for, 12, 13, 14 years. A service dog, about 7 to 9 years, they're out of the game. Just because of the rigors. So we appreciate Loki and only can save long
Well,
lives.
We wish him all the years of relaxation he can get. Well deserved.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. All right, let's move on. Agenda item 8, just upcoming meetings. We don't currently have any subcommittee meetings scheduled. I know that all of the one-on-ones are being scheduled currently with all of us related to budget. And thank you to Harmony and Lisa for working with us to get those scheduled. And then finally, and I don't know, Sheriff, if you have any information you'd like to share, but we do have the Sheriff Fallen Officer Memorial scheduled for Monday, May 9th at 10 a.m. at the Sheriff's Office Building. Anything you'd like to add to that or share about that, Sheriff?
Just we want to invite the board. You'll each get your invitation through, is it going to be through Harmony? Okay. We just, want to make sure that you're all invited. We're also having our awards in May that will invite you as well to that. So.
Do you have that date yet?
So awards date or the May 9th.
I see this one as May 9th, and I'll see if the mayor.
Do you have the awards date, Harmony? Yeah. June what? 8th? June 8th. So we'll invite you to that as well.
What time is the 9th?
The 9th is at 10 o'clock. And that'll be here.
If we could have invitations sent out to the board as soon as possible to hold those dates and times, that would be very, very helpful.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you so much. Any other questions regarding this agenda item from anyone on the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 9, and I would welcome a motion to approve our March 17th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you both. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Okay, moving on to item number 10, we have a closed session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. I will entertain a motion to close.
Madam Chair, Jeff Silverstein, I will make a motion pursuant to Title, I think 52 of the Utah Code to go into closed session to discuss reasonably imminent or pending litigation.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you. Harmony, will you do a roll call, please, to close?
Yes, Director Bradley,
Aye.
Director Brams,
Aye.
Director Daly,
Aye.
Director Flint, Director Keighley, Director Litvak,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis, Director Silvestrini,
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
Thank you very much. As soon as the room is clear.